And good afternoon. Welcome to the Getaway today, a special edition of the Getaway. I want to thank Amy McGovern for all the help in putting this program together, with the help of Sam Cutler, the man who was the Rolling Stones tour manager in 1969, came to the States with the Stones. And the rest of it is a conversation with Mr. Sam Cutler as he went from the Rolling Stones through their American tour and then on to Altamont, which finalized that tour in 1969 on this day 42 years ago. And then he joined up with the Grateful Dead and became their manager as well. So let's get to the program on WDEV, The Getaway. Welcome to WDEV's The Getaway. Sam Cutler, a former tour manager for the Rolling Stones during a pivotal time for the Stones, 1969, and the Let It Bleed album, as well as the American tour. And, of course, you began prior to that. Sam, why don't you give us a little bit of background as to how you got to that point?
Well, I started off producing shows, small, and slowly got bigger and bigger, and I ended up doing some free shows in Hyde Park, which is a big park in the middle of London in England. And I did ones with the Floyd and did one with Blind Faith that had about 150,000 people at it, Eric Clapton's band. And Mick Jagger showed up at that. He really liked the show and started talking to me about it and, you know, the logistics of putting a thing like that together. And then I was asked to do one for the Stones, which I did. It was very successful. 500,000 people showed up at it. And the net result was after that the Rolling Stones asked me to be their tour manager.
And, of course, part of the background...
a short history.
Yeah, and the background is that this was right at the critical time when Brian Jones had been found dead?
Yes. Well, what happened was that the concert, they replaced Brian with Mick Taylor, and just a few days before the concert, Brian died. Much to everyone's horror and shock. So the concert kind of turned into a memorial for Brian. It was very moving. It was beautiful.
And it was a memorable day, and like you said, it was just a piece of history, and you have been a piece of history for quite a while now, Sam. So from your book, You Can't Always Get What You Want, which you have written, it includes your days with the Rolling Stones and also with the Grateful Dead. It's not everybody who gets the opportunity to work with two acts of that stature.
No, indeed it's not. I mean, in some respects, I feel, very fortunate. I was a lucky man. I mean, a lot of life is serendipitous. You can't plan for these things. The last concert that the Rolling Stones did in America was a complete disaster at Altamont, December the 6th, 1969.
If we are all one, let's Joe we're all one. Preach it, brother!
Urgently, man. That's
There's one thing, what we need, Sam, we need an ambulance. We need a doctor by that scaffold there. If there's a doctor, can you get to there? Okay, here we're gonna. I don't know what we're doing. Come on, we can get it together.
And the Grateful Dead, of course, were intimately involved with the planning of that concert. It happened, out of their offices, basically. And thereafter, again, by a strange series of fate, their manager had ran off with a pile of money. They were in a lot of trouble, and Garcia asked me to come and help. And so I went smoothly, as it were, from the Grateful Dead to the Rolling Stones. From the Rolling Stones to the Grateful Dead. So there you are. The fates were kind to me.
I would say so. And also one of the things that I've noticed is it seems that you've entered both of these bands at a time when they were going through some very heavy transitions.
Yeah.
How did that impact you?
Creatively, I think, and economically, both, and you have to be, in life, sometimes one has to be ready for these moments and be prepared to step up to the plate and do the business, So I was very fortunate to be around at those historically kind of opportune moments.
And you definitely get the sense of you're being drawn along while you're reading the book, as far as the stories that you have to tell, especially the story leading up to Altamont. One of the things that really struck me was the fact that the Rolling Stones, in their view of everything, they had you on the ground doing your element, being their representative, but it seemed like there was a total disconnect within the Rolling Stones organization as far as protecting the band, other than you being there and telling them you thought this was a bad idea.
The Rolling Stones at that time were working out how to be a mega band, if you like, within the new paradigm of America at the end of the 60s. They hadn't been in America for a few years prior to that. And I think that it was a bit of an eye-opener for them. Before they came on the 69 tour, they'd play for 15 minutes, people would scream, run at the stage, and that would be the end of it. Now they came to an America where people wanted to sit down and actually listen to what they were doing as a band. So that was one big change. The other change was that there was a battle going on for control of the Rolling Stones management at that time. So they were kind of effectively leaderless. So it was a bit of a mess in some respects.
And then you added the additional thing of the manager, Alan Klein, being fired by the Rolling Stones right before they came to the U.S., right?
He was fired immediately prior to the tour, and his nephew left Alan Klein and came to work for the Rolling Stones. So that was just a huge, domestic kind of fight between the Klein family, and that had its effect on the tour.
So while all of this is going on, the Stones are trying to finish up on Let It Bleed while they're in America. They're launching the tour, and they're being lobbied to do a free show because people are saying that they're trying to make too much money off from the American audience, right?
Yeah, which was a furphy. I mean, that was just not true.
Right.
That was a Ralph Gleason trip, which was completely not true. The Rolling Stones tickets, for example, were $8 at that time, believe it or not. And the Doors, for example, were charging $7 a ticket. So the Rolling Stones weren't wildly, out of the marketplace. But there was a lot of resentment led by Ralph Gleason about the Rolling Stones. I never quite understood what his point was, to tell you the truth.
He was an interesting and powerful man out of San Francisco, wasn't he?
He certainly was, and he played his part in making sure that the concert that should have happened in San Francisco itself, in Golden Gate Park, was blocked by the city council and forced to go to an inappropriate place.
Hey man, look, we're splitting. If those cats we're splitting, man, if those cats don't stop beating everybody up inside. I want them out of the way, man. I don't like unity.
That guy's got a gun out there and he's shooting at the stage.
Well, let's go back just a minute, because one point I want to make is I was a student at the University of Denver at that time, and I paid my $8. I saw that first show at Fort Collins, Colorado, and was just blown away by the power of Terry Reid, B.B. King, who came on after that, and then the Stones. There seemed to be quite a delay there, and then they came on, and they definitely delivered the goods. And it was, like you said, the first time the Stones had been in the United States for like 3 or 4 years. So it was an event.
What's in your eye?
And you're listening to a Getaway special. Conversations with Sam Cutler, the author of You Can't Always Get What You Want. His days with the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead on WDEV's The Getaway.
The thing about the Rolling Stones, of course, is that it's very difficult to tell the Rolling Stones, you've got to go on stage now. I used to tell Mick, look, we're 20 minutes late, Mick. We're 30 minutes late, Mick. We're 45 minutes late, Mick. Whatever, Mick and Keith decided when they were going on stage, not some tour manager.
But then you came up with a great line calling them the world's greatest rock and roll band.
Well, the greatest rock and roll band in the world.
Yeah.
I got a lot of stick from that from Mick. He hated it. But we had a conversation about it, and I basically laid it on him and told him, well, either you are or you're not,
Yeah.
What's it going to be?
And they delivered. So I guess they are the greatest rock and roll. So let's just talk.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about the Rolling Stones. I was just going to say, the wonderful thing about the Rolling Stones is that, they're a very human band. You think, oh, God, they're going to fall over here. This is not going to work. And at the last minute, from the jaws of disaster, they managed to pull forth this brilliant set, you know. They're quite extraordinary like that, and they have been for many, many years.
So you do touch on the fact that Mick pretty much controls the decision-making process in the Stones?
Well, he did in those days, yeah.
Okay. So, and that...
Now Keith has come back to earth. So Keith had some say.
Much more these days, apparently, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think of their plans? They've been floating the idea for their 50th anniversary, bringing Mick Taylor back as well as Bill Wyman.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. And they should bring...
Yeah, I mean, I hope Mick just, stands still, plays harmonica and sings, and doesn't run around and looking like a complete brat, and just does what he does best, which is make music.
And hopefully they'll continue to do it until they can't, right?
Well, this is it. They're they're blazing the new trail, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
It's got John Lee Hooker played into his 90s. Why can't the Stones?
And that was Keith Richards talking years and years ago, saying, all the blues artists who stick around, I'm going to do the same thing. So I guess he's going to live right through that. So why don't we move off from the Rolling Stones and talk about the involvement with the Grateful Dead and how that developed?
Yeah, that's much more to my taste.
Okay. So the Grateful Dead, you were in Altamont, and you were part of Rock Scully had talked to you about the Stones doing the free concert, and we know what happened with Altamont and all of that. And then you were the only Stone representative to stay for the aftermath of Altamont. And that led you closer to the Dead?
Sorry? Yeah, well, what happened was, actually, I had nowhere to stay, and Garcia very kindly said to me, look, come and stay at my house. So I went and lived with Garcia.
Just come on over, right?
Basically, yeah, he was very kind to me.
Yeah.
I think he felt a bit guilty about what happened at Altamont, which could have been such a wonderful thing, and turned into a horrible disaster. I think and he also, of course, was very interested in how the Rolling Stones organised their setup, business-wise, because the Grateful Dead were in a mess. So he wanted help with that, and he was curious to talk to me about how English bands did things, and eventually he asked me to join the band and be their tour manager.
Which was a great offering, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I didn't say no.
Now you had the job. You were with the Grateful Dead. They needed to go out on tour, so being tour manager was a pretty key position in the organization at that time, right? Well,
95% of all the Grateful Dead's income came from doing live gigs. It always has, they never sold millions of records or anything. So being the tour manager was a major, major job.
And you went about and set up, how many shows did they do that first year that you were the tour manager?
We did over 100 in the first year.
And the reason for that was because Lenny Hart, the father of Mickey Hart, the good old Reverend Hart, had taken some money and split the scene, right?
Yeah, the Christians stole the money. What can you do? Lenny's defense was that every other manager of the Grateful Dead had done it, so he didn't see any reason why he shouldn't do it.
Did he ever go to jail for this?
I think he did, but only for, 3 months or something.
Yeah. And Mickey, as a result, left the band for a while, and finally he did come back.
Poor old Mickey, right? What a horrible position for a man to be in. It was just terrible. The band was totally in sympathy with Mickey, but Mickey, descended into a kind of period of depression, shall we say, and felt it better to, strike out on his own for a while. It was very sad.
Yeah. Billy Kreutzmann stayed on the drums. Phil was there. You had a lot of work with Phil because he was the most reluctant person to go on the road of all the band members.
Well, really, we used to have meetings, where like 60 people decided what we were going to do. And it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, listen, we can't have this. We've got to get more organised. And in the end, what they said was, well, the one person who's a pain in the butt about deciding whether to do things is Phil. So if you can persuade Phil to do gigs, we'll all go along with Phil saying yes or no, as the case may be. So I worked closely with Phil. We developed a very good relationship. It was basically Phil didn't like coming in the office, So I used to have a once-a-week meeting with Phil, and we used to say, look, okay, well, let's spend an hour doing this. So we used to roar through everything, and it was a yes, no, sort it all out, and that was that part of the job done.
And then you were ready to go out on the road. Phil was all set. The other band members got into it.
Then, you know, it was agreed we would do this date, this date, that date, and then I would then, you know, take care of the logistics of taking all that equipment, all those people, and the family members on the road.
And there were a lot of family members, as I recall. How many total?
Oh, mate. Of course. Try telling someone who's living with one of the Grateful Dead that they can't come on tour. Impossible.
So all the Grateful Dead family would get together, and you would have to get tickets for them everywhere they went. Hotel rooms.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. It depended. Sometimes, you know, like Garcia didn't like his old lady being on the road. Some times the old ladies came, sometimes they didn't. Just depends. I mean, the whole thing about the Grateful Dead was flexibility. Everything changed, you know what I mean? It could change from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Depended, you know, so you had to be very flexible and ready for anything, which we always were.
Some folks trust reason.
So did you have to wait on Garcia, or was it just the family in general? That was just the word?
I never had to wait on Garcia. Garcia wanted to play every day of his life.
Okay.
He wasn't a problem. No problem. We'd just say, hey, Jerry, we're playing this, and this. And he'd look at it and go, well, why have I got one day off? What am I going to do on that day? Get me a gig on that date. He just wanted to play every day.
Well, I know. I lived in the Bay Area during the mid-'70s and stuff, and they were taking their hiatus for that year. And it seemed like Jerry and Merle Saunders were everywhere in that year, just every club.
Yeah, Jerry, that's what he used to say to me, listen, man, that's what I do. I play music. If I'm not playing music, I've got nothing to do. So, you know, I want to play.
And you did. You did the 100 shows for the tour. One of the highlights probably was your final stand at the Fillmore East.
Yeah, it was amazing. We worked hard. The band was about $700,000 in debt, and we still had to support ourselves while, you know, paying off that debt.
Right.
But within 2 years, I got the band to really good shape, and all of us worked our butts off.
Well, the first days
You're listening to a special edition of The Getaway on WDEV, a conversation with Sam Cutler, the former tour manager of the Rolling Stones for the critical year of 1969, and then on to the Grateful Dead, and the author of You Can't Always Get What You Want. We'll return to more right after these words.
Wednesday afternoon between 1...
Now, did they do any recording during this period?
Yeah, they recorded Working Man's Dead.
That's right.
And American Beauty.
So probably two of their best albums came out during that period when they were working themselves out of debt, doing all the touring. Robert Hunter was writing some great songs that Jerry. It all seemed to be moving forward there.
They were hot. And we did the European tour. 3 albums came out. The Europe 72 album came out.
Right.
A triple live album. Yeah, we worked hard. But, you know, hard work don't kill you.
It could be the other stuff, right?
Indeed. Hard work never killed anyone, I don't reckon.
No.
And I'm 69 almost. I'm fit, ready to work. I work every day. I'm a writer, you know. I work on my writing every day. And, yeah, you just got to go for it, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Why stop, right?
That's right.
Tell me
a
little bit.
That's what we do.
That is what we do. And you just got to keep on going. So just a little bit about Bobby Ware in the Grateful Dead. How did he fit in?
Well, Bobby, I mean, I've got absolute admiration for Bobby, because one of the things about the Grateful Dead that's so interesting is what they do with their 2 guitar players.
Yeah.
You know, and Bobby has managed to evolve a guitar style to sit somewhere between Garcia and Phil Lesh on bass. And what he's come up with, of course, is a completely unique way of playing. I love the way he plays. I love the way he sings. He's a great musician. And when I first joined the Grateful Dead, he was a bit, how shall I put this kindly? He was a bit chaotic in terms of going on tour. But we managed to lick it all into shape, and he became as professional as anybody about touring, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any
Brilliant guy.
Yeah. And still playing as well. He's not going to stop either. He and
That's
Phil
right.
and Further and all of that. Have you had a chance to catch the latest incarnation, the Further
No,
band?
I haven't. I'm coming next year to America, and I'm hoping to go to a bunch of Further shows.
Great. I think you'll enjoy
I'm
them.
looking forward to it.
The Getaway special featuring Sam Cutler on locally owned and operated 96.1 WDEV FM in Warren, FM 96.5 in Barrie, AM 550 WDEV Waterbury, Montpelier, and serving the Kingdom on FM 101.9 from Island Pond. Any favorite songs by the Grateful Dead that just pop out?
Oh, thousands. Any of them.
Okay.
Dark Star. I mean, what can you say? You know what I mean? I listen to the Grateful Dead every day. I love the Grateful Dead. There's no band in the world that even comes close to them in my book, including the Rolling Stones. So, yeah, I would hesitate to, China Cat, Sunflower, Dark Star. There's so many wonderful, wonderful tunes. And, I love them to pieces.
You put all of this, and the love definitely comes through in the book that you've written called You Can't Always Get What You Want, Sam. And how can people get a hold of the book?
The best way would be on Amazon, I would have thought.
Okay.
Just go to Amazon. It's still selling well in America, North America. It's out in Japan. It's coming out in Germany. It's doing well. People like it because I wanted to write a book that, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on you, didn't have any bull crap in it, to use a polite phrase, and so many rock and roll books are just full of nonsense. So I wanted to write something that was real for people that are real people who love the Grateful Dead and, wanted some genuine information, not nonsense. So hopefully I've, managed to do that.
Well, I think you have. As the reader, I was just transported back to that time because definitely a very critical period in rock and roll with two of the best bands. You were right there on the inside seeing what it was. And personally, I want to thank you for sharing some of these stories because they're really great. And I just want to end up with the Festival Express and that whole experience because the movie was released, about 2-3 years ago, and people actually got to see it, but there were all these rumors about it. Now we saw it, and it looks like it was crazy, and you caught a lot of that and captured it right here in the book.
Yeah, it was an amazing time, and he put all those bands together, the band, the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, people like that, Elephant's Memory, Ian and Sylvia, the New Riders of the Purple Sage. You put a Buddy Guy who was unreal, a young Buddy Guy. He couldn't believe it. It was the first tour they'd done with a bunch of white bands. They were the only black guys on the tour. They were welcomed with open arms. Buddy Guy was playing like a monster, amazing guitar player. And everybody just had this massive party on a private train going across Canada. How could you not have fun? It was a blast.
Yeah, and it sounds like a blast. And the only downside, again, came into this whole pricing thing, right?
Yeah, well, there was
ticket pricing.
Stupid radical idea that music should be free. You shouldn't have to pay for it. I mean, thank God that's gone out the window. I mean, musicians have to eat too.
We finally got all that together that we were talking about before for the people outside. Here's Sam Cutler, the manager of the Grateful Dead, to explain it all to you.
What we've managed to get together is 2 flatbed trucks, and we'll be over in Coronation Park.
It seemed to us as long as we were there, we could go ahead and play something for free, and we did.
They've got a right to earn a living.
Yes, they do.
So there's all that. So there's lots of fights going on about, and all that stuff. But that was a minor inconvenience compared to all the fun that people had.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and people can experience all of that by picking up your book, going to Amazon.com and ordering. You Can't Always Get What You Want. Sam Cutler writing about his experiences with the Rolling Stones in the Inner Circle and at that critical juncture in 1969, even prior to that. Also, we didn't even touch upon your relationship with Pink Floyd and that band in an early incarnation as they were growing from Sid Barrett into Roger Waters and David Gilmour and stuff. And you were there, and it comes right through.
I was indeed. I was a lucky man.
And we should all just thank you for sharing all of this with us, because definitely takes a little bit of that curtain away, and we can see a little bit clearer as to how these bands definitely functioned. And you can read all about Garcia and the indecision and stuff, but the more and more you hear about it, and just the fantastic music that the Rolling Stones and the Dead were able to put out there is just a testament to their talents. And yes, musicians do deserve to be paid for what they do.
Absolutely. Well, it's lovely talking to you. I'm talking to you and your listeners from Australia on my cell phone, in the parking lot of the coffee shop where I'm now going to go and get my morning coffee.
Well, that sounds
great. Bless you, and bless you for your listeners. Thank you for interviewing me. Thank you for saying such nice things about my book.
It's a great read, Sam, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us as well. And enjoy that cup of coffee and the great weather in Australia.
All right, buddy.
Have yourself a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
God bless.
Okay, bye. Grateful Dead, and they're wrapping up a special on the Getaway for this December the 6th, the anniversary of the death of 4 people at a Rolling Stones concert known as the Altamont Speedway in Livermore, California. One of the victims stabbed to death by a Hell's Angel, and you heard some of that. And then in 1970, the first anniversary of that Speedway concert, the Altamont Speedway concert, the documentary Gimme Shelter, premiered in New York City. It was about the Stones 69 tour, and there we heard it from a guy who was out on that tour with him. Left from England for America, moved into L.A. with Keith and Mick and some of the other Stones, and they planned the tour. They were also doing the recording of Let It Bleed at that time, and being kind of asked by the Grateful Dead and other people to do a free concert at the end of their tour, and they finally did it, and that's what we had 42 years ago. So there you go. Sam Cutler. You can pick up his book at Amazon.com or some local bookshops right here, and it's called You Can't Always Get What You Want, so please pick it up. It's a great read, some great stories, and we just shared just a little bit, and of course some great music from that era. All part of the Getaway. We have the Arts Calendar on the way on WDEV.